Well, we talked about the defending national champion in Kansas already. Let's talk about the team that won it in 2021, the Baylor Bears. They have been up and down this year. We've seen some young talent. However, they seem to be on the right path going into the tournament. They sit in a 3 seed, and honestly, they sit in a very tough bracket. I think that they sit in one of the toughest brackets in the South, especially in their spots. We're going to see them against University of California, Santa Barbara for their first game. Some of the experts on the television, Steve, is already saying that that could be an upset for Baylor in the first round. So we will have Santa Barbara in their Sweet 16 as one of those big upsets. I'm not one of those people. But when you look at the potential, if everything works out in chalk for the second round games, they got to face Creighton, who you and I both said at the beginning of the year would be a Final Four team. They obviously had a rough go, but they're starting to figure it out now. This Baylor team, though, they won it in 2021. Honestly, I could see them making a deep run again. They would have to get past Alabama if they wanted to make it to the Final Four. That seems like maybe too tough of a task. What do you think about this Baylor Bears team?
What is it about Baylor athletics that sports writers and TV pundits just don't like Baylor? I mean, I don't understand what it is, and especially this basketball program. This has been a really good basketball program. I mean, they've had some rough patches, but really they've been pretty good over the last 10, 15 years for sure.
For sure.
And and for them to be a 3 seed. I mean, they played in the best conference in America, the Big 12. And I think they held their own in just about every game. I mean, every team has a stinker. I know they had a couple that you kind of wonder how did they lose those games? But I could see Baylor making a run all the way through. I mean, they have the talent. I mean, they're well coached, but I just don't know how they could make it through this bracket. Because, I mean, by the time they would, let's say, get to Alabama, let's say that they would play their way through and get to Alabama, I think they're going to get so beat up on the road that they're just not going to have enough in the tank to keep up with the run and gun Crimson Tide attack.
Yeah, I mean, they lost 4 of their last 6 games, including tournament play. And I know I mentioned that they're on the right path. And the reason I say that is because, one, they had a fantastic resume all season long. But when you think of who is really leading that team, you have a stout, fantastic Keontae George. And I know I say leading that team, he's only a freshman, but what he has done so far this season, has been amazing, averaging over 15 points per game. What he's doing with this squad is just really impressive. I think that they'll be just fine in that first round game. What worries me is not just them against possibly Alabama if everything works out in their favor all the way to the Elite Eight, but that second round game against the Creighton Blue Jays team. I think that if the Blue Jays team can get it together, with the exception of their dreadful rebounding play, that Creighton team can be another team that could sneak out a win against this Baylor team.
Well, and that's exactly why I could not pick Creighton against Baylor. I think it's a bad matchup. I mean, Creighton can rain threes all game long, but ultimately you have to, at least on the defensive end, you have to at least keep pace. And I just don't see this Blue Jay squad matching up against Baylor, on the board. So I think that gives Baylor a decided advantage. It would be a close game, but I think that would make a huge difference for me. And then you just look at the bracket going all the way through. Then they have to play Arizona.
Didn't even bring that up. We were talking about Bama, but Arizona could be in the way too. If chalk is the case. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and Arizona is another team that has to be saying, well, what do we have to do to prove ourselves here? Because if they get put in the region that they have to play teams like Baylor and Creighton and then eventually have to take on Alabama, which is how I have it in the bracket. I have it pretty much, chalk going through there. But Baylor's one of those teams. Any team coming out that plays in the Big 12, I think, has a chance to make a run to the Final Four. That's how tough conference play is. I mean, I would say up until about 3 weeks ago, you could argue that every team in the Big 12 should have made the tournament. Now that will never ever happen. They'll never let that happen. I mean, Oklahoma State stumbled, but I mean, really, you could make an argument and saying, every team in the Big 12 should have gotten an at-large bid in addition to the automatic, conference bid there. And I think that's why Baylor is going to be battle tested, but they're just the matchups are going to just take too much out of them, and there's going to be nothing left when it comes to play Alabama. You have to have you have to have more than just something in the tank if you're going to hope to try to knock off Alabama, in my opinion. So Baylor, they're going to be a fun team to watch. They play entertaining basketball. They play both ends, of the spectrum. They play offense. They play defense. So Baylor fans, I would take heart. I mean, you certainly could make a run. I just hope that between the Big 12 play and having to take on Alabama to come out of the region to the Final Four, I hope it's not too much of a challenge for you.
That South region is going to be wild. I mean, you look at the teams that are in that South region, and you mentioned them: Arizona, Alabama, Baylor. I mean, Virginia, just for the top four. It's going to be a wild region. I would not be surprised if we see easily chalk 1 through 4, or we see crazy upsets making their way to the Sweet 16 out of this region. But Baylor is the biggest question mark in my mind. How far will they go? Will we have a 2021 repeat? Will they go every other? Will they go 21, 23? Or will we see them maybe possibly upset in the first round, like some people think, by UC Santa Barbara? I'm going to go a little bit in the middle here. I think that we see them go pretty decently far, but not far enough to get out of the region. I have them going and losing in the Sweet 16. That's where I'm sitting with Baylor. Your thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, well, I have Baylor losing to Arizona as well. So because I'm looking at a Alabama-Arizona regional final, but Baylor matches up pretty well with Arizona. Arizona's had some consistency issues. So if they hit them, on the right night, maybe they do pass on to get to Alabama. But either way, Baylor, even if they only get to the 16, they can hang their head high because they had a terrific season, and a lot of people were writing them off early, saying, well, yeah, they really, and it's always the same story. Oh, they really, they can't match what they did last year. Oh, they can't match what they did 2 years ago. They always find a way. And I think players want to not only get recruited there, I think Baylor is going to become a regular stop for players in the transfer portal that are looking to be able to compete in the best college basketball conference in the country.
I agree, completely agree. Let us know your thoughts. What do you think about the Baylor Bears and that South region in the 2023 men's college basketball tournament? March Madness is here. We're going to have you covered every step of the way until we crown a champion between the men's and the women's side. But until then, thank you for watching SlasherU.